Alright, 6.4, section 6.4 in the beginning algebra talks about complex fractions. Complex fractions are simply, let's see, I guess here's our goal as well. Simplify a complex fraction. So we'll see, number one, what a complex fraction is, and number two, how to simplify it. Now, I've made a little bit of different outline here, or I guess recording area, because what I want to do is have all of our steps over here. We're going to follow these steps all the time, and then we will have our active screen over here. So here's our first step, complex fraction. What is it? Complex fraction is just a fraction where the numerator and or denominator, should be an and or denominator, has a fraction in it. So here's a complex fraction. Here's the big divided by a bar. Here's our numerator, 3. Denominator is 2 minus 1/2. Now the fraction here is a complex fraction because it's got a fraction in the numerator, fraction in the denominator, fraction here in the numerator, fraction here in the denominator. Here's a big one, kind of a messy one. Got a fraction here in the numerator, fraction here in the denominator. So that's really a complex fraction, and we're going to just simplify these. Simplify them by getting one thing that is our numerator and one thing that is our denominator. So over here is our steps. We've got two different methods, and I'm going to suggest, just my suggestion, I guess. Sorry, got stuck there. My suggestion is just to follow method number one. Because we can follow method number one or method number two. Either one will get us to a simplified fraction. But method one is going to, in my mind, I guess, is going to give us a quicker way to get to the answer that we want, to get to a simplified fraction. So I'm going to try and do here is, let's see, I'm going to try and pin this. Hang on one second. Alright, there we go. So page number 2, this page is going to be pinned all the time. We're going to see this all the time because this is going to have our steps on it. Over here is going to be our active page. So like I recommended, method 1 is going to be our best, quickest way to get to a simplified fraction. Step number 1 is going to be determine the lowest common denominator, lowest common multiple of the denominators of all the fractions in the numerator and the denominator. So number 1 is determine the lowest common multiple or lowest common denominator, lowest common multiple of the denominators. Step 2 is multiply the numerator and denominator of that complex fraction by the lowest common multiple, by whatever we found. So over here, for example, lowest common multiple would be x minus 1 times x plus 4, because these are the two fractions. There's the fraction in the numerator, fraction in the denominator, and we've got to find out what the lowest common multiple is of that and that. So what is it? X minus 1 times x plus 4. Lowest common multiple is every single factor from every single denominator raised to the highest power that you see it. So it's that one times that one. So what we would do is multiply this entire fraction by x minus 1 times x plus 4. And there's just an example. So that would be step number 2, is multiply that numerator and denominator of that complex fraction by the lowest common multiple, and then simplify. So it seems like a lot, but really, let's underline this as well. Multiply the numerator and denominator by the lowest common multiple. So there's step number 1. Step number 2 of method number 1. I'm going to recommend we follow this one. So let's take a look at what our next page would be. So here is, in fact, that first example. Sorry. Yes, right there. So here's our first example of a complex fraction, and I just moved it to the next page so we can kind of take a look at that one. 3 over 2 minus 1/2. There it is. How would we simplify this? We've got to simplify it by kind of getting rid of this fraction. So first, for the method I recommend, determine what the lowest common multiple is. Lowest common multiple is, well, this is 3 over 1. Let's go over here. Lowest common multiple of every fraction in the numerator and denominator. And any fractions up here, well, it's 3 over 1. So we could put a 1 over here, but that's not really necessary. This is 2 over 1. We could put a 1 over here, but it's not really necessary because it doesn't help us. There's only one factor in that lowest common multiple in the fraction. So the 2 goes over here as part of our lowest common multiple, and really that's the only common multiple of any fraction that's here. We've only got one fraction. So that's step number 1. Determine the lowest common multiple of the denominators of the fractions in the numerator and denominator. There's no fractions here. There's only one fraction down here in the denominator, and the lowest common denominator of this fraction too is just 2. Alright, so step number 2 now is multiply. Step 2, multiply the numerator and denominator of the complex fraction. Here's our numerator, here's the denominator. Multiply the numerator but denominator by the lowest common multiple. Alright, so we've got to really multiply by 2 over 2. And in fact, what we're doing here is multiplying this complex fraction by 1. 2 over 2 is 1, so we're just multiplying by 1. We can do that. We can multiply anything by 1 and get to the same spot. Alright, what do we have then? 3 times 2 in the numerator, 6. In the denominator, I'll change that to green. I'm going to multiply that 2, I guess I'll change it to blue. 2 times 2, because really the denominator becomes 2 times 2 minus 1/2. I just switched these back and forth. Alright, 2 times 2 gives me 4. 2 times negative 1/2, positive times negative, negative. 2 times 1/2, 2. And all of a sudden now we got no fractions in the numerator, no fractions in the denominator. That's really nice then. So what do we get then? We get our numerator of 6, denominator of 4 minus 2, 2. 6 over 2 is 3. And there's our simplified complex fraction. This fraction here is equivalent to, or is equal to, 3. And we're done. We've simplified by finding the lowest common multiple of any fraction. Multiply by the lowest common multiple over the lowest common multiple in the red here, and that gives us, we're really multiplying by 1. 2 over 2 is 1. But we're multiplying by this, and the reason we multiply by that is so we can get rid of these fractions by multiplying. When we multiply, we get rid of the fractions, and we just simplify, and we get an answer. And there's our answer.